Hey everybody, welcome to Six Pack Abs. I'm Johnny CATANZANO, your certified trainer. In today's video, I'm going to show you 3 exercises to perform that'll completely train your entire core, and it's all based on actual science and studies. So you know that this information you're getting has that evidence behind it, so you know that you're not going to be wasting your time and your efforts will be rewarded with great gains in the midsection. So with core training, you've got to break down your core into the different muscle groups because the core is made up of a couple different actual abdominal muscles. You've got your rectus abdominis, which is right here in the middle. You've got your transverse abdominis, which is here along the side, as well as your internal and external obliques. So you can see it's not really just one muscle that you need to train if you want to train your abs completely. Now in today's video, the primary focus of this video will be on the rectus abdominis, because for most of us, those are the ab muscles that we need to develop in order to see them when we take our shirt off or to see them at a particular body fat percentage. And to answer that question real quick, typically you need to be between about 8 and maybe 12% body fat and I'd say about 12 and 16% body fat for females in order to see your abs, okay? So with your ab training, like we talked about, you've got to break it down into your different muscle groups. Each of these muscle groups has a different primary movement or primary function. For the rectus abdominis, your primary function is going to be spinal flexion, okay? So the ability to actually flex your lower spine, not just your thoracic spine at the top, but actually flexing that lower spine. Secondary function of your rectus abdominis is going to be like a core rotation, okay? Then we're going to move on to your internal and external obliques. Primary function of that is going to be your actual spinal rotation. And then your secondary movement could be a lateral flexion. Okay. So if you want to train those muscles effectively, you need to have those types of exercises included into your ab routine to make sure that you're well-rounded and training all those muscles properly. Another very common question you might be wondering or you may have heard of is can you spot train abs or target a particular region of your abs? Well, I already explained how the core muscles are broken up into actual different ab muscle groups, but those individual groups, for example, the rectus abdominis, studies do show that you can place more emphasis on certain areas of that rectus abdominis, so breaking it into your upper and lower portions. I'm going to put those studies for you in the description, so make sure and check those out. And don't read just the abstract, actually click the link to get to the study and read how they perform that study. So what they use to identify to see that you can actually effectively train your upper and lower abs is EMG. So electromyocardiograph basically is what that is where they attach you basically to an electronic machine. They're going to check for that stimulation, muscle fiber stimulation. Now, I will say that EMG is not the end-all be-all when it comes to, yes, that is the perfect exercise and you must do it this way. So it is something that you want to group into all of your research and take somewhat with a grain of salt, but the studies do show it, so I wanted to explain that to you. So when we break down our muscle groups, we are going to be essentially targeting the upper and lower portions of our rectus abdominis. Now, in order to do that, you have to be doing 2 different types of actual movements. We talked a little bit about spinal flexion earlier, so that's going to be doing like a crunching movement. To target the lower abs, you are going to be wanting to do a leg raise type exercise. So in these studies, they actually looked at all these different types of exercises and broke them down from crunching type movements to leg raise type movements to rotational type movements, and had the subjects hooked up to EMGs, and they could see that they all gave out different readings on that scale. What we noticed for the leg raising movements is that the EMG was the highest for your lower portion, and then on crunching movements, the EMG portion was highest for those upper portion of the abs. So that's why we want to make sure and target both. Now, the last thing I do want to mention that you do want to incorporate into your ab training that most of you probably aren't doing is doing actual different types of training. So not just flexion training, meaning going through the concentric and eccentric portion, so stretching and contracting the muscle. You also want to do some isometric training with your core, especially if you want to build core strength and stability. So isometric training being like an actual hold of some sort. like a leg raise with a hold or a core rotation where you're actually going to be holding that resistance. What that is called an anti-rotation exercise. So you want flexion, you want isometric in your ab routine, okay? So those are the two different types of exercises you want. Now let me break down the three different actual exercises we're gonna do. All right, now before I show you guys the first exercise, I am going to tell you that I'm gonna show you the main exercise that you can do in a gym or if you have some equipment. But I also remember not all of us have access to a gym, and especially because of COVID, we're gonna be doing a lot of this at home. So I'm gonna show you a variation that you can do at home without any equipment. Okay, so our first exercise is going to be hanging leg raises. Now for this, you do need something that you can hang from, a pull-up bar in the gym or something similar. Now with the hanging leg raise, this is gonna, again, focus on our lower region of the abdominal muscles. Now, most people will really kind of butcher this one up using a lot of momentum and a lot of swinging and incorporating their hips in a lot. Or the range of motion is going to be very short. Some people you'll see just leg raising up to here, very slow, or you'll see them swinging back and forth to get their legs up, or you'll see such a bend that it turns into a knee raise. And that's not exactly what we want. Now I will say this is a little bit more of an advanced exercise. So if you can't quite do the leg raise, wait for our variation that we're going to do on the ground without any equipment. You'll be able to better do that one. So with the leg raise, the key is you have to get into that spinal flexion. We talked about in order to properly contract the rectus abdominis, you have to get in that spinal flexion. So if you're doing a leg raise and you're only lifting your legs up this far, you're not getting into that spinal flexion. You're not going to properly contract your rectus abdominis. So in order to do that, you have to bring your legs up and your knees as far as you can towards your chest, contracting those abs and then preventing those legs to lower back down using those core muscles again. So what that is going to look like is with knees slightly bent, you're going to bring up, exhale on the way down. Bring the knees up, exhale on the way down. Up, exhale on the way down. Okay, so you can see after just 3 repetitions, I'm already starting to feel it. A little bit more of an advanced exercise. If you can't do that one or if you don't have equipment, we're gonna do bench reverse crunches. So a similar movement in that we are lifting our legs, because remember right now the focus is our lower abs. So with the reverse bench crunches or bench reverse crunches, you're gonna lean back on a chair or on a really sturdy coffee table or something that you have at home, or if you're at the gym, just use a bench or a box. You wanna brace your upper body and lift, bringing your knees all the way to your chest and lower down. Up and lower down. Knees all the way up and then lower down. Okay, so that's our first exercise. Now that was the variation, and that is going to help us target the lower rectus abdominis or our lower abs. Now moving on, we're gonna wanna focus a little bit more on our upper abs, especially for some of us. Those are gonna be the first abs you're gonna see as you lose body fat. So moving on, now we're gonna wanna shift our focus from the lower region of the abs to this upper region. And for most of us, those are the first abs we're gonna see as we lose body weight. So we're gonna wanna make sure and develop those as much as we can. So what I'm gonna demonstrate for you now is a kneeling cable rope crunch, okay? So this one is also oftentimes very butchered in the gym using either not enough range of motion or using too much momentum all over the place. You get the idea. So for this, we want to make sure that we are stretching and contracting the abs fully. So what that means is, let me go ahead and shift this way and make it a little easier. What that means is when we pull down and crunch all the way down, just like we talked about before, we need this lower lumbar flexion. That is the primary movement of your rectus abdominis. So if you're only coming down to here, that's not a full contraction. You have to actually round that lower spine. It is safe. You don't need to load a ton of weight on this, but this is a safe movement. A lot of people think any rounding of the lower back is just inherently bad. Well, it depends on the application and what you're doing. Like if you're wanting to strengthen your rectus abdominis or your spinal erectors, you're gonna have to have some sort of lumbar flexion in there in order to stretch and contract those muscles. So what we'll do is grab some weight. You get down on your knees. You wanna try to relax your butt and your hips as much as you can here. So we don't wanna use a lot of leg. We're gonna stretch up the whole way. And you're gonna crunch all the way down, bringing those elbows towards your knees. Blow your air out, and then you're gonna let it go. Stretch all the way back up. As you can see, when I get down to the bottom of the rep, I am getting that full lumbar flexion, completely contracting my abs and blowing the air out. All right, now, if you're not at the gym and you're at home or you're stuck at home and you want to do this type of movement, but you don't have the cable rope crunch, you can do a feet planted bench crunch variation. It's very simple to do. So if you have a chair or a box at home, that's all you need. You're gonna sit on the edge of this box. Then you wanna find something you can put your feet under to plant your feet, okay? What this is gonna do, it's gonna help to prevent a lot of your quad and hip flexor involvement, making sure that we're using our core as much as possible. Same thing here. We're gonna wanna lean back, crunch all the way up, okay? Core tight, lean back, crunch all the way down. You have to bring those knees into your chest in order for this to be effective, okay? All the way back, crunch up. The most important part of this movement is this stretch back. We're getting a full lengthening of the abdomen, which is again is a flexion movement. So we're having an eccentric portion where we're stretching the muscle, which is here, and then a concentric portion where we're going through the contraction, which is here. Now, for those of you that have maybe a tight lower back or something, or back issues, this one's probably not gonna be the best for you, so just tread cautiously with this one, making sure to control your breathing and keep the tension on your core and not your legs or your lower back. All right, now for the last exercise I'm gonna show you, we are gonna touch on those internal and external obliques. Now, for the most of us, we really don't wanna make them way bigger because you're really trying to keep a tight waistline, but you do wanna strengthen them and you do want them to be better at the job that they're supposed to do, which is that spinal rotation, okay? And a great way to strengthen your core and to help keep that waistline tight is to do anti-rotation movement. So in this exercise I'm gonna show you, it's called the kneeling PALLOF hold, okay? So this one we will use a handle and the cable. You can also use a resistance band, is perfect for this one. What you're gonna do is you're gonna get a nice athletic stance, knees slightly bent, hips straight, chest up. You wanna tuck that tailbone just a little bit and get those hips nice and tight. You're gonna bring this out in front of you and you're gonna hold it with both hands, okay? You're gonna get it right to the midline of your body. What we're gonna do now is from this position, and I do have this tension on the cable, is now we're gonna get down into a kneeling stance, still keeping that nice and tight next to our body. Then we're gonna extend out right in front of our body. Now I can feel a ton of tension on my internal obliques especially, but also my external obliques. You're gonna wanna hold this for about 30 seconds, and then when you're done, just reverse the process. Bring it back in, one foot up, other foot up, and then let it return. Great exercise for your internal and external obliques and anti-rotational movement. Now, if you don't have the cable at home, like I mentioned, you could do it with a band, but if you don't even have bands, you can do a body weight movement that is gonna be somewhat similar. It's not identical to that, but it will be somewhat similar. What you're gonna do is just do a kneeling side plank. You don't need to be all the way out on your feet. Let's go ahead and bring it into our knees. Let's make sure our hips aren't way back. We actually want them forward, keep our body in a nice straight line. And you're just gonna get up on your hips and hold for 30 seconds. Now, if you wanted to, a progression to make it a little bit more difficult would be to do some hip extensions, just like this. Okay, so this is a slight variation of the PALLOF, trying to get close without that equipment, and it will be just as effective on those internal and external obliques. All right, now that I've shown you the exercises, I'm gonna tell you exactly how many sets and what sort of rep ranges you should be performing these in. So for the spinal flexion and the leg raise type movements, you're typically wanna stick to about the 8 to 15 rep range. There's a common myth out there that for abs, you need more reps. That's not true. So you're gonna treat your ab muscles just like the majority of your other muscles. And for muscle building hypertrophy, you're gonna wanna target that 8 to about 15 rep range. Now with your core, you typically can increase the frequency, hitting it maybe more than once a week, 2 to 3 times a week, depending on the level of skill that you have and how often you actually train. With the core rotation and the anti-rotational movements, you're gonna wanna typically do those ones for time. I do recommend starting off with about 3 sets at 30 seconds a piece on each side. You gotta make sure and do both sides. All right, everybody, now that I've talked about it, now that I've demonstrated it, I'm gonna run you guys through an entire set of each one of these with me so you can see how that we do it properly. And then at home, I want you to finish out with 2 more rounds of each one. All right, everyone, I really hope that you enjoyed this video. That's it, that's all you need. Focus on those 3 exercises and those 3 types of exercises to complete your core training. Now, if you want to sub out some of those exercises and do ones that you already know or other ones that you like, just make sure you're not doubling up and doing 2 leg raising movements or 2 crunching movements. You want a little bit of everything, anti-rotational, leg raising, plus crunching movement. That's how you're gonna get the most out of this, okay? So if you have any questions, make sure and comment below. We love seeing those questions from you guys. Make sure and turn the notification bell on. That way you get a notification every time we drop some new content for y'all. So share this video, give us a like, subscribe to us on Facebook. We really appreciate all of y'all. Coach Johnny here at Six Pack Abs. I want y'all to have a fantastic rest of the day.